Good morning. This is Tracy Halesvast with Right on Four Corners on KSJE 90.9 FM in Farmington, New Mexico. Today I'm talking to Douglas Clark, who writes as R. Douglas Clark, about two of his books, Welcome to Maravilla, and his latest, Dangerous Crossing. Good morning, Doug.
Good morning, Tracy.
So I read both of your books here, Welcome to Maravilla and Dangerous Crossing. Well, I liked both of them very much. They, like you said, they're very different books.
Right. Pigeonhole.
Absolutely.
Either one of them.
Right. They really are, except that they're fiction. But both have
Right.
a lot of opinion or, talking about important issues, I think. In Maravilla, you talk about this whole secession thing with Maravilla. Why don't you go ahead and give our listeners a synopsis of first Maravilla?
Maravilla is a town in northern New Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
Small village, and there are a number of characters. There's a lot of idiosyncratic characters,
Yes.
and the social order is kind of shaken up when a young writer comes to town.
Mm-hmm.
Who's trying to finish some work that he's been working on. He has a deadline, and it's a science fiction story.
Mm-hmm.
It's meant for as a graphic novel, and he's working with a Japanese artist. They are the two main characters. His name, Jake.
Right. Jake Epstein, right?
Right, there you go. Taikiko, the science fiction character, young woman who's on a mission to deliver substance to another planet, which will help them survive the Crossarians. So the book goes back and forth between the science fiction part and the regular narrative part. At the end, they come together near the end.
I think it's interesting that Maravilla is set on two counties, and so they decide that they want to secede and make their own county. That whole process is really interesting, and how they determine how many, there's enough of a population. And then we have the whole other issue in this book of Glory Land, and how they want to establish Glory Land.
Yeah, there's a number of subplots going on.
There are.
Well, Gloryland is an idea that some out-of-town developers have to have a Christian-themed amusement park. The townsfolk don't really want one.
And there are some characters.
Very strong personalities.
I like them very much. And then we have Dangerous Crossing, which is your latest book. And that's a completely different book. Do you want to give us a little synopsis of Dangerous Crossing?
Sure. It takes place in South Texas, especially around Brownsville, and other locales are Laredo and Houston and Saigon. And the year it takes place is 2009. Brad Collins is the first character we run into. He's the head of a nonprofit agency, which is, he is being blackmailed for sexual misconduct and hopes to keep the matter from going public. And so he hires an investigator named Eddie Maez, who's really the protagonist, to see what he can find out. And Eddie finds out that there's a human trafficking operation going on. The reason Brad Collins is involved is because they're using his nonprofit agency's lot for the entrance and exit of the illegal Mexicans coming through. And they have a tunnel that goes under the Rio Grande. The lot is right on the Rio Grande River there's a tunnel that goes underneath they're using. So he discovers that, and later on discovers that they're not only are they bringing in illegal laborers, but they're bringing in heroin at the same time, and they're supplying a drug lord in Mexico, Matamoros, called El Flaco. El Flaco is quite a character.
Yeah, he is.
And anyway, the workers are employed at a processing plant called BJ Shrimp Company. Eddie Maez goes undercover to determine the nature and extent of the crimes there at BJ Shrimp, and he discovers the whole heroin plot, how the drugs are distributed. When Maez feels he has enough information to expose the operation, he goes to a contact he has at Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, and they put together an elaborate dragnet that requires the participation and coordination of several government agencies, and then all the plots are exposed, and a few men die, and a couple escape, and there's a few loose ends that are tied up. That's the basic overview.
Eddie Maez, I really like him, and I like Ray Lynn too, and they have great discussions on immigration.
Yeah, I forgot about Ray Lynn. She's she's an accountant at BJ Shrimp, and sort of by coincidence, she gets to know Eddie, and like you say, they have to get into some deep conversations because they don't always agree.
They don't always agree, and with that, you bring up some good points on either side of the immigration issue. I think it's interesting that they get along so well and can discuss these, though. They're very real people.
Yeah, I feel like I know them.
I bet you do. I feel like I know them after reading this. Will we see them again in any future works?
I don't have anything planned.
Ah.
But you never know.
You never know. So, when you wrote Dangerous Crossing, it was a long shot from Welcome to Maravilla. So, what gave you the ideas for this?
Well, Dangerous Crossing was the second, more recent book, and the subject matter there was easier to come by because it's kind of contemporary.
Right.
There's a lot of references to real things that are happening on the border. I actually wrote both books simultaneously, go back and forth between the two. I'd get stuck with one of them, and then I'd go to the other one. And sometimes I'd put one of them down for several months, work on the other one, and then switch. And that seemed to keep solving my problems that way.
That's interesting. I ask authors if they can write two pieces at the same time, and often many can't.
Yeah. If I'm going good guns with one or the other, I don't stop. It's just when I get stuck that I stop.
So then you are what they call a pantser, right? Rather than a plotter?
Pantser?
You write from the seat of your pants?
Oh, I say yes. Making it up as I go.
Uh-huh.
I've tried plotting it out. Some people do. I've tried that, making outlines and having everything worked out ahead of time, but it just is so stilted that way.
Yes.
For me, I can't do it.
I guess each author's different in that way. Would you like to read something for us from Dangerous Crossing?
Yeah. Got two passages here. And the first one is just a character description of one of the characters in Dangerous Crossing called Briggs.
Good.
Where Briggs grew up or why he landed in South Texas, no one knew. He was obviously not a native Texan. His lack of an accent betrayed that secret immediately. In fact, Briggs's accent would have befuddled a linguist. By all accounts, his past was a mystery. He had worked at the pipe supply company until it closed, but before that, Briggs might have sold shoes or insurance, might have painted landscapes or invested in stocks. There were rumors that he had run internet scams and fraudulent telephone schemes. But it was hard to know. Delmore Briggs didn't fit any standard profile. He dressed like a nerd from the 1980s. He was polite to the point of deference. He didn't smoke, drink, or swear, and he didn't seem to have any interest in sex. What did interest him was power and control. Since he didn't have an intimidating physical presence or a commanding personality, he learned how to attach himself to powerful people. He was, in fact, eager to do the bidding of a man with vision. Wherever he went, he looked for those who were respected and recognized on the street, whether they were businessmen, politicians, or gangsters. To them, Briggs made himself useful. If one thing was sure about Delmore Briggs, it was that he was educated. He spoke in full sentences, used correct grammar, kept up with the news. He knew all sorts of seemingly random facts, such as the birthstone for November, the circumference of the Earth in miles, Oscar winners going back to 1950. He could recite the prime numbers to 233, and he quoted from Sun Tzu's The Art of War. He used this miscellaneous information to spice up a conversation, not to show up his intelligence. In fact, he downplayed his brains, saying that he had a good head for facts and figures, but he didn't have a mind that was strategic or creative. After a while, his constant smiley-faced demeanor got on people's nerves, but they put up with it because in the underworld, where Briggs operated, every powerful person needed a go-between, and sometimes a dog to kick. Briggs filled both roles.
You have a way
That's
of...
Delmore Briggs.
That's Delmore Briggs. Yeah, you have a way in here of really building the characters, really fleshing them out.
Yes. It's somewhat comical, but he's a serious dude.
And did you have another passage you want to read?
Yeah. This one involves two minor characters in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Billy and Axel.
Oh, right.
They're small-time thugs, and they work for this guy named Delaney. Delaney has asked them to kill off Eddie Maez. He's causing too much trouble and wants to get rid of him, so he calls his go-to thugs, Billy and Axel. Their plan was simple. They would catch him at home late at night when the whole neighborhood would be asleep, including Maez. Say 4 a.m. Axel would drive, and Billy would be the shooter. Billy didn't want to go through the garage like they had when they ransacked Eddie's house previously because it was noisy, took too much time. They had been lucky none of the neighbors heard them breaking in. In the back, there was a half stairwell with a door that opened onto a landing, steps that led down to the basement or up to the kitchen. Billy, who was good with locks, go in there, sneak in through the kitchen, walk quickly down the hall to the bedroom, and nail Eddie in his sleep. We'd use a silencer, and it would be all over in a few minutes. Billy would walk out the front door. Axel would be waiting by the curb. He would drive away quietly and ditch the gun in the Buffalo Bayou on their way out of town. With this plan in mind, They left Brownsville for Houston around dusk, arriving in Houston just after midnight. It was a moonless night, as dark as the inside of a gun barrel. They didn't want to be seen by anyone who might place them in Houston that night, so they stayed out of bars and restaurants. At 3:30, they drove to Eddie's neighborhood, killed the headlights, stopped in front of his house. What the thugs didn't know is that after their recent break-in, Eddie had a burglar alarm installed. So when Billy ever so carefully picked the back door lock and gently opened the door, the alarm went off. It was an ear-splitting siren that caused lights to go on in houses up and down the street. Eddie immediately rolled off his bed onto the floor, grabbing his gun that he kept on the nightstand. Billy and Axel realized their nearly foolproof plan had one fatal flaw, that they had best get the hell out of there. Already inside, Billy panicked and ran to the front door, where he wasted precious seconds fiddling with the double lock stud. Desperation, he blasted the locks apart and flung open the door. The silencer didn't muffle the sound of wood splintering, and Eddie got to the door as Billy was sprinting toward the car. "Freeze!" Eddie yelled above the screech of the alarm. "Freeze or I'll shoot." Whether Billy heard the command or not, Eddie did not know. In any case, Billy kept running and Eddie fired at him. He saw Billy drop his gun, clutch his leg, and pitch forward like a running back diving for extra yardage. He hobbled toward the car as fast as he could. "Freeze!" Eddie yelled again. Took another shot, missing Billy by putting a hole in the front fender. Axel had opened the passenger side door and was impatiently racing the engine. Billy reached the car and managed to pull himself in. Axel roared off, tires squealing, the front door hanging open till a sharp right turn slammed it shut.
I like those.
Did you like that?
Yeah, I do. The thugs. They're quite a pair.
Yeah, not a very...
Not the brightest boys in the place, right?
No, no, not afraid to commit a violent crime. No.
Right.
Yeah.
So in both the books, like I said, you have a lot of different fleshed out characters. So now that both of these are finished, what's next?
Well, at the moment, I'm working on a book, another novel. It takes place in the 1930s.
Oh.
In the Four Corners area, and from Durango to Mesa Verde to Shiprock, and then as far over as Monument Valley. It's fun to write about that area. So it's so beautiful and
It is.
interesting, you know.
Yeah, and in that era, in the 30s, it was pretty wild still.
Yeah, that's a fact, and wild in more ways than one.
Right.
There's still people that get around on horseback. You know, there's criminals in that world too.
So are there criminals in the new book, in the new novel?
Yeah, in fact, the main character is a bounty hunter.
Oh.
Who's looking for a guy who escaped the Santa Fe jail.
Oh, I like that. Well, that's
it's fun to work on.
So are you working on just one now, or are you working on two this time also?
No, at the moment I'm just working on one. Yeah.
I suppose if you get hung up in a spot on that, you might start another one.
Right. If I can get inspiration for another one, and I get stuck on the first one. I should say that I spend some of the time when I get stuck researching, all sorts of things.
Right.
Like in Dangerous Crossing, I had to learn a little bit about shrimp.
Right, right.
How they're grown, how they're caught, what their habitat is. And I enjoy that kind of research, so.
It's amazing how much research is required for fiction works. And
Yeah, it really is.
in Welcome to Maravilla, I'm sure you had to research a lot of the legalities with the court and the things they go through trying to make their own county.
Yeah, and it's all there to be discovered if you look.
Right. And then I'm
There's
sure
one-
for your new book set in the 30s, you're doing a lot of research.
Yeah, some. I haven't had to do too much yet,
Mm-hmm.
but and mostly I've just been writing on that one. Don't want to stop doing that. If the writing is coming, I don't want to stop to research it unless I have to.
Right. You're working on that, and I look forward to reading that. Now, you have a website, rdouglasclark.com, that tells a lot about your books and where people can get them and things like that, right?
Yes. You can order them off the website. You can order from Amazon or Barnes & Noble or IndieBound. And if you want to buy it from a local store, they will order it for you.
They will. We have a little independent bookstore in town that will do that. And that was Doug Clark, writing as R. Douglas Clark, talking about his books, Welcome to Maravilla and Dangerous Crossing. This is Tracy Hales Vass with Right on Four Corners on KSJE 90.9 FM in Farmington, New Mexico.